Fear Not, Episode 89. Hi, I'm Billy Atwell, and I believe that consistently facing your fears is the only way to realize your truest self and to make those confident choices that will help you to obtain your deepest held hopes and dreams. I have faith that this podcast series will show you that you are not alone, that it will strengthen you and give you courage to face your fears, and that it will help you to permanently cross over into a life of living beyond your fears. Join me on this journey as we listen and learn from others as they share their experiences in facing and overcoming their own fears. You're productive, no question. Sometimes you're flying faster than a tornado, but to what end? It's like there's no practical link between your long-term goals and your daily tasks. But what if there was a tool to keep your goals visible all year long and helped you stay focused on the critical next steps to accomplish them? Well, there is. Michael Hyatt's approach to work is day by day, week by week, and quarter by quarter. His new full focus planner connects the dots and lets anyone put this approach to work for them. It's like an insurance plan for achieving your goals. Ever since I've started using the full focus planner, it has helped me to stay focused and reach my goals. It complements my digital calendar and has replaced all other organizers that I was using. It facilitates easy goal tracking and review, so I never lose sight of what matters most to me. It prioritizes my tasks, so I'm always maintaining momentum on the activities that will help me to reach my goals. It optimizes my weekend for maximum rest and rejuvenation. It goes with me everywhere I go, from my studio to the coffee shop to the park, wherever. The Full Focus Planner will equip you to plan your year, design your day, and achieve your biggest goals. Want to receive a 15% discount on the Full Focus Planner? Visit livingbeyondyourfears.com and click on the Full Focus Planner button on the sidebar. Hello, everybody. Today you and I are going to be joined by Andrew Alexander. Hey, Andrew, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing really well, thank you. Andrew graduated college and into the middle of a recession. Broke and unemployed at the age of 25, he decided to end the life he was living, but not in the way you might expect. On March 16, 2012, with $250 left to his name, he packed his Nissan Sentra and drove 2,000 miles across the country on a journey to learn what it takes to be successful. On that journey, he worked his way inside the inner circles of millionaires and celebrities and began learning what it takes to live the life of your dreams. He went on to build a digital magazine publishing company with over 1 million readers and published 2 books, including The Cure for Happiness, Timeless Secrets to a Stress-Free Life. Andrew believes that every major change to your life begins with a leap into the unknown and asking yourself, what would happen if I never took that leap? Andrew, can you take a few moments to fill in the gaps and maybe give us an additional brief glimpse of your personal life?
Definitely. So the story you referenced right there is 2012. Like I said, I graduated into a recession and I couldn't get a job for the life of me. So I read a book by a millionaire who lived in Scottsdale, Arizona. And at the time I was living in North Carolina. I had $250 to my name and I was kind of stuck in life. I wasn't really going anywhere. And I just told myself, what'll happen if I continue doing what I've been doing, which is kind of the reverse question that most people say. If I drive across the country and meet this person and try to chase my dreams, what's the worst that could go wrong? But I always like to reflect it back, what's the worst will happen if I don't change? So what I did is I packed my car, drove across the country, like the story said, learned from millionaires, built that online business. And then right around June 2014, the business took off. I was getting about 60,000 app downloads per month, and I was making enough money to support myself. But I had that fear pop up saying, what would happen if I quit my job and take the leap into being a full-time entrepreneur? And at that point, my worst fear was, what would happen if I lose my money, if I go broke and I have nowhere to go? So for the next 2 years of my life, I was not living my fears. I was living my dreams. I drove across the country, drove the Pacific Coast Highway, lived all across in Seattle, Boulder, wrote different books, started another business. And then is when I took the leap and flew over to Europe. It was right after my 30th birthday. I was living in Manchester, United Kingdom, as a couch surfing with someone, and my cell phone reception went out. My bank cards got declined, and my worst fear unfolded. I was out on a date with a girl I met on Tinder, and I had no money. no cell phone service. And the guy I was staying with, I wrote him a rent check, and he didn't take the check because it was in United States currency. So he threw everything I owned on the street. So I reached my worst fear, pretty much being on the street in the foreign country. And by actually jumping in and living that myself, I realized I could survive through it. Where I'll give the details a little bit later on, but that's the point of my life where I realized one day we're going to die. And if we look back on a life of regret, it's better to run forward towards our dreams as opposed to living a life where we regret it.
Andrew, would you also share with us today what your perception of fear is? If you can give us, what you define fear as.
Yeah, so there's two types of fear, and we discussed this earlier, where there's the fear if there's a bear chasing you in the wilderness and your life's in danger. That's one type of fear. But for the other specifically, if I find a woman attractive and I'm scared to talk to her, or if I'm trying to make a sales call for my business, it's that thought in my mind of what happens if I don't achieve my goal. So if she rejects me, or if the sales call, the other person rejects my proposal, I really learned when I studied psychology comes down to self-judgment. So any fear you have is some type of self-judgment about yourself. So what does it mean about you if you don't achieve your desired outcome? So if I get rejected, it means I might think I'm not good enough, or if my business fails, it might mean I'm a failure. So it's all really about those thoughts and the emotions of what you feel when you think of the worst possible outcome.
Andrew, you have a lot of experience from our previous conversations and from reading your books. I was hoping that today you could share some of the stuff that you've learned and some of the techniques that you help other people and that you do with yourself so that we too can also live a life that's not a shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Definitely. So there's two parts of this where they call it the outer game and then the inner game. So what I really studied is when I built my first business, I got really deep into personal development and psychology. And so the way I mostly help people when I work with their fears or any like insecurities or anything in their life is really understanding how you're driven to act at the unconscious level. So if the example with, say, I find a woman's attractive and I'm scared to talk to her, my friend could say, don't worry about it. Doesn't mean anything. Just go for it. That's logically speaking. So what I studied is really deep into the unconscious mind, where how our unconscious mind stores our perceptions, our memories, and our emotions. So if you think of something that you're scared of or fear of failing, what you want to do is bring up a picture in your imagination. So if you see the worst case possible outcome and just see yourself having that unfold, that is how your mind sees everything at the unconscious level. So if you think of the fear of failure, that picture in your mind is exactly what it is. So thoughts are pictures, and every picture in your mind has an emotion attached to it. So if I look at the picture of myself getting rejected by someone I find attractive, it might have an emotion of a 5 out of a 10, 10 being the most intense, and then 0 having no emotion to it. So from there, I learned a very specific, it's an emotional release technique that they teach on YouTube for free. It's very easy and very quick. It's called the emotional freedom technique, where you tap certain points of your face while repeating different, it's like reverse affirmation. So if the picture sees myself if I see myself in the picture as a failure, I tap certain points that the tutorial shows and says, even though I'm a failure, I still love and accept myself. And what this does, it disrupts the emotional flow through your body of that fear. And within maybe 30 seconds, that negative emotion or that unwanted emotion is completely gone. So it's one of the most effective techniques I used when it comes to overcoming fears or any insecurities or self-judgments about myself if I don't achieve my goals.
So, what do you do when you are approached with a new situation? I mean, you couldn't stand right in front of this girl and start touching your face.
I actually probably would do that in front of people, but I'm special. But for most people who listen, won't stand in front of someone and do the tapping or whatever it is. That's more about behind closed doors at home. But the other thing is to gain a lot of life experiences where you put things into perspective. So in my example of being scared of my business failing, I might have told the story earlier where lost all my money. I was in the middle of a foreign country and I faced my worst fear. And in that case, I was on a Tinder date. Everything was thrown in the middle of the street, no money, no cell phone reception. And that was my worst case fear, and I survived through it. So I lived with my Tinder date for a couple of days, met a friend in Amsterdam, stay there for a couple weeks, and everything, if you look in the long run, everything works out for the better. So what really helps me is to look at the bigger picture, where maybe that one little fear, it might be a short road bump that might be holding you back from longer opportunities in life. So that's one more practical way of dealing with it.
When you're saying that to visualize the worst case scenario, I mean, some of the guests that have been on the show before have talked about, the laws of attraction and stuff. So isn't that kind of how do you sort of handle that then? Because it seems like one or the other.
Definitely. So yeah, I'm definitely familiar with the law of attraction, and I do practice that. So the way my mentor phrased it, I'll censor the language for this, but he said a lot of like positive affirmations, just looking at the positive side of you. It's like taking a pile of dog poop, covering and frosting, and calling it a cupcake, where there's still the part of yourself that you don't want to see that's buried beneath it. So at the end of every session I do with myself or when I work with people is get them in that positive emotional state of already having what they want and being the person they want to be. But before that, you really just want to kind of shine light on the darkness. So get that negative self-image or that fear, bring that to the surface, and through that technique I showed you, or just accepting yourself as that person and just not really resisting it, it kind of has that dissolve away. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, it does actually.
So yeah, by just removing the sides of yourself that you don't want to see, a lot of times we bury it down. And as I mentioned in my book, is I faced a lot of stress when my business crashed the first time, and I stuffed it down into my unconscious. I buried it all the way down, and I ignored it. And that's the thing that led me to having a lot of stress, anxiety, heart palpitations. So I know a lot of people, they don't want to face the dark sides of them, but I think of it as reaching down in, grabbing it temporarily, and throwing it away so it's no longer a part of you. So that makes room for any law of attraction or visualizations to be more effective.
So you're just basically confronting it and just staring it right in the face, but you're just not giving into it. It's kind of like the hero's journey almost.
Exactly. Just you accept it as opposed to resist it. And once you face it, then it's no longer as scary as you think it is.
Would you share some other examples in your life of how you've used this technique to, deal with your fear and to get on the other side of the fear?
The best examples I could use lately is just like you, I have an online brand where I put myself out there, and I used to always fear judgment and ridicule, where I make a blog post where I just really open myself up, and then people come up and they attack me or say they don't agree with me. And I always had a fear of putting myself out there because I'd face that judgment and ridicule. So just like the techniques I was talking about before, it comes back to my self-judgment. So what's it mean about me if they judge me for this? And really using techniques to gain confidence and being okay and comfortable with who I am regardless of what happens.
Andrew, I know happiness is such a key component in facing one's fear. And I know in your book, The Cure for Happiness, you talk about ways to, have a stress-free life and to be happy. Could you share some of those techniques with us today so that we could implement those into our lives?
Definitely. So as far as happiness, I know as entrepreneurs and other people might listen to the show who have larger goals in life, you want to strive for something and you want to always chase something more. And I talked about this later in the book, where it's always like a constant chase where I'm not going to be okay unless I achieve this next goal. So I once told myself when I was driving across the country for the first time, if I could only get a decent paying job, I'll be happy. So I got the job and I just still wasn't happy. I was still chasing more. Then I said, if I got this promotion, I'd be happier if I got the promotion. I got the promotion and then I still wasn't happy. It's always as if something was still missing. Then I saw a guy on the internet who drove a Ferrari, had an online business, traveled, and he just looked so happy. So I told myself if I could build an internet business, if I could be free, if I could travel and pretty much live the life of most people's dreams as people value freedom and travel, that I could be happy. And it wasn't until I was traveling through Europe where I met another entrepreneur where he's in the same position as me, where even though the people on the outside, they said we were living the life of the dreams, we're making money through our online business, we're traveling, we're free, but we're still chasing more. We still weren't happy with where we are at that moment. So what I learned in that instance is It's the desire for more and wanting something more that drives us to push for greater heights. But it's always important to take a step back and be grateful for what you already have. So I made a YouTube video about this once where I called "The Journey is the Destination," where we chase all these goals, we chase all these dreams, we want to buy these new things, and they give us a slight a dopamine rush that makes us feel good temporarily. But once we achieve these goals, then we can look back and realize the journey to get there and the journey going forward is the true prize. And as long as we're enjoying the process to get these things that we want, that's where I discovered that true happiness lies, where there's really no end of the tunnel prize. It's just a constant journey to experience life the way you want to experience it. And one thing I do to really make that a daily practice is to feel grateful for something. And what I learned about emotions is regardless what happens on the outside, you could control how you feel on the outside. So let's say if you don't have a lot of money, if you're single and alone, or maybe you're not in the best shape of your life, you could control how you feel on the inside regardless of all that. So if you don't have a lot of money and you can't be grateful for having a bigger house or a nicer car, you could be grateful that you have food on the table or a shelter above your head. So by practicing finding something in your life to feel grateful for, it's simply an emotion. And once you learn how to bring that up from within you, that is where you could choose to be happy whenever you want. And it took me about 5 years of chasing to finally find it. That's part of the reason why I wrote the book.
You expressed gratitude. Is it just, do you journal that, or is it just speaking that to yourself? What is it that you do specifically?
I know a lot of people practice journaling. I don't do that myself, but I find something in my day that I could feel grateful for. And just I find a physical object outside of me. Usually it's when I do my morning meditations, I get a cup of green tea, and just the taste of that, or just feeling grateful for having something so clean and healthy to begin my day with. It's really a matter of going inside of you and pulling up the emotions. So what would it feel like if you were grateful right now? So just trying to feel that and then just really bring those to the surface. And it always helps me to have something like a cup of green tea or something outside of me that really helps pull it to the surface.
Andrew, if there was one thing that we could start doing today in this moment to turn our life around so that we don't come to the end of it with regret, what would you suggest?
When you said that, there's about five things that came to mind. And the first one off the top of my head is to realize that you want to run towards what you do want as opposed to running away from what you don't want. Because we mentioned there's that one road that you could walk down where it'll lead to the life of regret. And that usually is a result of not going after the things that you want. It's usually avoiding that thing standing in front of you where you're constantly staying in place. And there is another road that you could walk down where it's running towards what you do want, where instead of viewing the things along your journey as large failures that really stop you from getting what you want, just think of them as small road bumps on the way to chasing after want. Because when I built my first business, that's the reference point for a lot I do with my entrepreneurship, my apps got rejected 16 times before they were finally approved. And if I stopped at the first failure or rejection, I would have never got to the goals that I set out to achieve for myself. So a lot of myself and a lot of successful people I met over the years is they always focus on what they do want and run towards that as opposed to away from what they don't want.
Andrew, if someone would like to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
They could visit either my website at thecureforhappiness.com, or they could email me personally at andrew@limitlessceo.com.
And Andrew, what parting advice would you like to leave with us today?
The final piece of advice is we have one life to live, so we might as well enjoy it while we're here, where we could focus on all the things that we don't want. But if you choose to enjoy the things that you do have instead of focusing on the things that you don't want, that's where I found to be the best experiences. So think about something in your life that you have right now and just feel grateful and feel happy that you have that. And just that simple shift of emotion could really turn your life around.
Excellent words of wisdom, and thank you so much for that. And I also want to let everyone know, too, that Andrew has generously donated a copy of his book, The Cure for Happiness. So if you'd like an opportunity to win that book, visit the giveaways page at livingbeyondyourfears.com and submit your free entry form today. Andrew, I want to thank you for coming on the show today. taking the time to talk to us and sharing your journey and your wisdom and just your experiences. It's been great. Thank you so much.
Definitely. And thank you so much, too. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining me today. And remember, you cannot achieve everything, but you do have the God-given ability to achieve anything. So stay focused, out of fear, and keep on keeping on. Until next time, be well and peaceful. For more information on today's episode and guest, or for resources that will assist you in overcoming your fears, visit livingbeyondyourfears.com. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, where 3 times a week we move to a life beyond our fears.